Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Falato. Tonight we're here to break down a few hirings for the New York football Giants. They are rounding out their coaching staff. A lot of news, a lot of moving parts, all came on Championship Sunday, where there was a slew of events where it started, I thought, Nick, with the decision for the Green Bay Packers to hire Jonathan Gannon as their defensive coordinator, which in a lot of people's minds meant, look, Jim Leonhard is going to take this Giants job. He was going to maybe go to Green Bay because Green Bay, it's his hometown. He still has his family out there. It's a pretty good defense to coordinate too from a talent standpoint, but without Green Bay in the mix, it felt like the Giants were in play. Obviously, a lot was contingent on what would happen with the Broncos in their game as far as when and where the Giants can get this hiring done. Ultimately, the Giants did not go in that direction of hiring Jim Leonhard to be their defensive coordinator. Time will tell on this, Nick. I heard some people speculate, which I thought was an interesting speculation, that he may end up taking a defensive coordinator job with Davis Webb taking a head coach job in Buffalo, and they just both go, which would make sense because I think he has probably in his mind, if that is the case, more upward mobility on that staff. I mean, look, if you join a John Harbaugh staff or you join a Davis Webb staff, you have a better chance to stand out on a Davis Webb staff. Or Vance Joseph gets a head coach job now with the Broncos out of it, and Leonhard just gets promoted there to be there. And who wouldn't want to be defensive coordinator for Patrick Surtain and Nick Bonito and a lot more talented defense than the Giants with a lot less holes and a lot more depth. So we'll see if that ends up being the case, or if ultimately the Giants and John Harbaugh decided, let's continue on with one goal in mind, and that goal being to establish a culture. And how do I establish that? I establish it with people that I can rely on that I've coached with before. And that's, just, I think, a big part of a lot of the hirings today and what we've seen so far with John Harbaugh's staff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the primary thing that you take away from this, right? Like Dennard Wilson was hired as a defensive coordinator. He was a secondary specialist. We'll get into each of these, but these are the just a general overview of all of them. Chris Horton as the special teams coordinator, Willie Taggart as the running backs coach, Robert Prince hired as the wide receiver coach, who became Twitter famous for challenging Jalen Hyatt for his ability to run routes, the former Cowboys wide receiver coach that a lot of us remember. And then a bunch of other assistants like Adam Schrack, Brandon Clark, Noah Riley. They were all with John Harbaugh in Baltimore. And also Dean Pease' son, Matt Pease. I'm sure they poop as well. He should be the assistant linebacker coach.
That was a nice little dad joke to throw in there on this
I'm
cold,
all
windy
jokes, man.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good dad joke. But I mean, it's a clean sweep. It's a clean sweep of former Ravens assistants who have worked with him. Not everyone was a current Ravens assistant, Dennard Wilson, but Dennard Wilson had worked with John Harbaugh in the past. It's clear to me what's going on here. And we don't know yet what's going to happen on offensive coordinator, but there's heavy speculation it'll be Todd Monken. That one's going to probably cost them a lot. I'm not so sure how much these two key coordinator hirings, Wilson and Horton, cost them. That remains to be determined, though I know there was speculation that this would be a situation where John Mara and ownership would open up the checkbooks and they would give John Harbaugh a really hefty budget to work with for his coordinator. So if that's the case, I wouldn't be surprised if we learn that Horton is, one of the highest paid special teams coordinators after this hire, or if Dennard Wilson is one of the highest paid defensive coordinators, because they view these candidates and these coaches as big time plays for them. It's not just that they work with Harbaugh, but I think it's important to note that, Nick, because I think when you're coming in and you're trying to establish a culture and you're trying to establish a way of doing things that is, let's just say, vastly different than what has been allowed to cultivate in this Giants building, whether it be Dable's laissez-faire style, Joe Judge's walk-on eggshell style, or all the different iterations of coaching that's gone through that building. If you want to change it and you want to make some kind of drastic, radical change, you need everyone to be on board with the same message, and you need them to know and have experienced what teaching and coaching that message is.
Absolutely, man. It's something for sure when it comes to just building a winning culture and a team and familiarity. Yeah. We talk about it a lot, kind of ad nauseum at this point, but like familiarity is a real thing. Think about it in your own life. If you have your own specialty, your own path, your own career, you want to surround yourself with people that you can trust, especially if you're going to be the head guy. This is the second part of your career, John Harbaugh, bringing guys that you can trust who know the John Harbaugh way, so there's no hiccups as you transition through training camp into preseason and then into the regular season. And that's exactly what he's doing. And it came at the expense of a lot of Giants coaches. None probably drew the ire from the Giants fan base, if you want to say there is ire, than the decision to not retain Carmen Bricillo, because we didn't talk about it on the last podcast. It broke like right after we dropped the Jim Leonhard podcast, and it does not look like, and it seems all but certain that Carmen Bricillo will not be retained as the Giants' offensive line coach. A lot of people speculate that it will be George Warhop, the Baltimore Ravens offensive line coach. I think he took over in 2024 and he was there last season, 2025, but that has not been confirmed yet. But it is disappointing, Dan. It is very disappointing because Carmen Bricillo did a fantastic job. And we've been covering this team for how long now? 7 years, 6-7 years.
Yeah.
See, I did not do that on purpose, but legit, we've been covering that long. And these last 2 years, it's been the best offensive lineup we've seen, not even close.
Yeah.
And this last year, especially, some of that is talent, but a lot of it is just the cohesiveness that unit had. So it's unfortunate that Carmen Bricillo will not be retained. And also, two of the starters that were on the line last year, they were Carmen Bricillo guys. That doesn't mean that John Harbaugh won't bring them back, being Jermaine Illuminor and Greg Van Roten, but it does mean that it's not necessarily a given that they will be back. And changing your entire right side of your line, grass is not always greener. So that's something to keep in mind moving forward.
Yeah, and not only just grass, not only greener from an execution standpoint and maybe a talent standpoint, from just a cohesion standpoint, from communication standpoint, as you mentioned. I think, ultimately, again, we're seeing another example of John Harbaugh prioritizing somebody he's already worked with, somebody who can deliver the message he wants them to deliver, be on the same page and know what to expect every day instead of having to spend that time and kind of, I don't want to say move backwards, but take longer to get started moving forward in teaching the way that you, just from an expectation standpoint, a daily expectation, an overall expectation standpoint, there's a lot to go along with coaching with people who have coached with you before, especially if you're trying to deliver a specific message. Now, it doesn't always work out, obviously, dude. Like, there's the Hal Hunters of the world. Like, Pat Shurmur comes in. I've worked with Hal before. He's my buddy. Let's bring Hal in. He knows the message. Well, Hal shouldn't have been in the NFL working for anyone as an offensive line coach, and then disasters ensue. But there's also the flip side of that, why it's risky to hire outside of your circle. Say, for example, Wink Martindale. It was great at first, but by year 2, Wink Martindale and Dable didn't get along. Their expectation for what Dable, his expectation, Wink, for what Dable should be doing as a head coach, which is AKA not getting involved in the defense, was not the same as Dable's expectation for what his role is as a head coach, which would be getting involved in the defense when things weren't going well for this team. And that led to an absolute blow up and ultimately Wink moving on. And some would say probably like the downfall of Dable and the culture and Joe Shane and Dable's relationship, maybe even as well. And maybe even some relationship in the building. And overall, that was not a good thing for the Giants. So I think there's two sides to that coin, obviously. On the offensive line, I think you make a good point, though. I would say if I had to pick, Nick, and you made me choose one or the other, I would say it was the coaching and the cohesion, the offensive line, and the communication that made the difference in this huge jump we've seen on the all-22 film from this line. Because let's be honest, like Runyon, Van Roten, and Schmitz it's not really a great interior offensive line, okay? And Illuminor has proven to be a great player with the Giants and with the Raiders, but is some of that because of the coaching and because he's worked with Bricillo? We'll find out. You just got to trust Harbaugh with these things. As far as the DC thing goes, it's just disappointing for me because of the way it was framed and set up. It was just so many things working in favor of me thinking Leonhard was going to come here. And Dennard Wilson may end up being a better coach than Jim Leonhard. He may end up being a better defensive coordinator. There's plenty of things he may end up being. I can't sit here and claim to know who the best coach is for the Giants or overall. I just know scheme, and I just know what we would have seen and gotten from Jim Leonhard. It's not going to be the same as what we're going to get from Wilson. That doesn't mean it's going to be better than what we would have got. It would have been more aggressive. It would have been different. It doesn't mean it's going to be better. And so, I believe in Leonhard's ability as a coach too, and I think he would have ascended. I think it's possible Wilson can too. I don't know as much about Wilson as I do Leonhard, so I'm open to that, and I'm excited to explore his defense. We're going to be watching some tape this week. I think I'm going to look at both 2025 and 2024 Titans tape. I don't want to just throw that tape out because it was 2 years ago when you consider all the injuries the Titans dealt with this year on the defense side of the ball.
Exactly. And when we're talking about Dennard Wilson in general, the Giants were really interested in bringing him in, but they hired Shane Bowen because Dennard Wilson had the leverage. He's like, I don't really want to join this lame duck staff. This is me speaking for him, but this is what it really looked like from the outside. I don't want to join this lame duck staff after a terrible 2023 season. Let me go with this new guy in Tennessee. It did not work out for either party, but now he's back with the New York Giants. We know the New York Giants had a lot of interest in Dennard Wilson, and he really boasted up his resume. I mean, he was with like Jeff Fisher and the Rams when he was a really young coach because he's only 43 years old. He's still a young coach. Then he's with the Jets. I believe it was with Adam Gase. And then he went to the Philadelphia Eagles with Jonathan Gannon. He was their defensive backs coach and their passing game coordinator. And that was when they went to that Super Bowl and they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. So he was a hot name, ended up joining Mike McDonald and the Baltimore Ravens in 2023. And nothing but respect from the John Harbaugh camp, from really the National Football League circuit. That's why we heard his name, was because of what he did with Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey and the Ravens secondary. But then he went to Tennessee. 2024 wasn't terrible. 2025, we'll go over some stats here in a little bit. 2025 was not great, but again, man, like you have Jeffrey Simmons, and what else are you really working with when it comes to defensive personnel down there? And they weren't an absolute disaster either.
Yeah, and the personnel was obviously an issue. And I think shout out to Giants8690 who said Ian Rappaport actually tweeted earlier, I missed this one, that Jim Leonhard decided to stay in Denver. And I think, that checks out from what I've heard. From what I've heard, Jim Leonhard was far and away the entire time John Harbaugh's number one guy. John Harbaugh pinpointed Leonhard. He believed in Leonhard. He saw it. It would have been a sick move, I think, by Harbaugh to pull off. But in the end, like, Leonhard wants to stay with the Broncos. Either he knows he's going to get a promotion to DC, or maybe he just doesn't want to move right now. Like, there is extenuating factors that could be in play here. But I believe it makes sense for Rappaport to tweet that when, hours later, both the Packers and Giants announced their defensive coordinator hires. I don't think it's a coincidence that once Leonhard said, I'm staying with the Broncos, those two teams acted on it. Maybe they were both waiting for Leonhard and then had backup options with Gannon going to the Green Bay and Dennard Wilson going to the Giants. It is what it is on that front. I am disappointed. There's just no ifs, ands, or but around it, but I'm going to be open to, obviously, Wilson, and I hope that he's going to be an excellent player. And I think you can look at what happened in last year and be like, well, at first, at the very least, Nick, and I saw this in the chat, and I was going to bring this up a little bit later, Jihad Ward played like 800 snaps for this. I mean, we just like Jihad Ward. Yeah, guys, that Jihad Ward who we had to like break down film of during the 2023 run because like he was on our team setting the edge and we had no edges.
Guys, I'm sorry to cut you off, but this has to be said. Jihad Ward, 48 pressures in this guy's defense.
I know.
5.5 sacks. Jihad Ward.
How many pressures can our guys get? Burns, Thibodeau, and Carter, if you extrapolate that. I mean, I can't believe Jihad Ward's playing that many snaps. I can't believe he had like the stamina and the energy to play that many snaps. No offense to Jihad Ward. And he'll probably block me or kill me or something if he ever heard that. Thank God he doesn't listen to this podcast. But like the fact of the matter is, like, that's a key cog in your defense that can't be what we look at and say talent, and especially when you look across the board. I think Bobby Skinner at some point tweeted out their depth chart from this season on the defensive side of the ball. Just a lot of players, like here it is right here. I mean, they had Jihad Ward playing a lot of snaps, Jeffrey Simmons, who's amazing, Sweat, who I think had a really good second year and I liked coming out, Joseph Day as their left defensive end, Cody Barden, Kedrick Gray, Larden Key. They had tons of issues with just injuries and different players having to play linebacker, similar to the Giants, like many linebackers. Just then in the secondary, a lot of unproven players as well. Kyrie Elam kind of bounced around, busted with the Bills. Darrell Baker. They had the kid they drafted 2 years ago with the 5th round pick was playing. I don't know if he played this year. He played a lot in 2024. Hooker is still there. So, I mean, it's not the most talented group there. That's why, if we just, what'd you say?
Oh, sorry. I thought you cut off there for a second. And their big signing, like the cornerback from the Chiefs, L'Jarius Sneed, they poured a lot of money into him. And he's just been injured since they did that, right? He was supposed to be that shutdown guy, so you could do creative things with your coverages on the back end, similar to what the Broncos do, and just be like, hey, meg that guy up.
Probably a big reason why he went there in the first place, Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, that's
at the same time.
It's very plausible, right? So just injuries have really hampered what Wilson could do as a defensive coordinator. And look, in 2024, their defense ranked second overall in the NFL in opponent yards per game. Their pass defense was second in the NFL. Teams could run on them, but it wasn't, they weren't a sieve. They weren't the New York Giants of 2025 as a run defense. They were 5th fewest in yards allowed per play. And Jeffrey Simmons was the dominant factor that he was over this past 2 seasons. They got contributions from Tavondre Sweat. So the defense was coming together in 2024, but this past season, they just they weren't that great. They finished 21st in yards allowed, 28th overall in points allowed. The run defense was 5th when we're judging by rushing yards, pass defense 21st when we're judging by passing yards, and just a lot of rotating parts. Their linebackers were actually the more healthy group, but the names for the linebackers are Cody Barton, who, if you remember, was on Washington, I think in the 2023 season. We saw him twice that year. He's not a terrible player, but he's your like linchpin, who's the only player on the defense who played over 1,000 snaps in 2025. And then Cedric Gray, right? So like you're talking about 2 players. Cedric Gray was a 4th round pick in 2024 by the Titans out of North Carolina. But a player that doesn't have a ton of, there's not a lot of investment in that position. And that coupled with all of the injuries to the other positions, I think it just, it didn't really work in the favor of Wilson, especially when he's coaching a a defense who has to kind of help carry the offense for the first,
Right.
I would say, 2/3 of the season as Cam Ward was trying to figure it out in the NFL.
Which contextually speaking makes what he was able to accomplish in 2024, his first year there, and you went over the stats, second best defense, all those things, even more impressive when you consider the offense was even worse in 2024. That was like the Will Levis offense with whoever else they put at quarterback that year. They were moving the ball even less than they did with
Was
Cam
it Mason
Ward.
Rudolph?
I think Rudolph played for them that year. It was Rudolph and Will Levis as the quarterbacks. And they, they fired the coach in that season, or was it this past season? I think it was actually this past season they fired the coach, but it was an absolute mess. So that's impressive in its own right. It is, I think part of it, like, as far as like looking at the personnel, you could make the case that the personnel that he had to work with in 2024 in Tennessee was worse than what the Giants are going to have in 2026. And that can lead you to believe that there's excitement for him. And I think that's perfectly fair and logical argument. I think you could also make the case, though, from my standpoint, like one of the reasons I wanted Leonhard, because I look across the board at like the Leonhard type of defensive coordinators, Nick, and I'll just put like Brian Flores in there and Rex Ryan, some of those types of guys. I feel like the talent is less important when you have that kind of scheme. I really do. I look at the Vikings roster. I'm like, they let Dennard Hunter go. That was their best player. The guy they drafted, that edge they drafted, has been okay at best. They don't have like an amazing interior pass rusher. They have Harrison Smith, who's old, but like solid. They have Van Ginkel, who they've kind of turned into a star. I feel like mostly Flores is just winning with scheme, honestly, and just not even scheme. I think it's mostly just the fact that you could just challenge quarterbacks in a certain way over and over again, and quarterbacks aren't good enough to make you pay for it if you're willing to commit to do that. Now, I don't think Wilson is that kind of coordinator, but that doesn't mean it can't work here. There's plenty of these great coordinators. Look at Mike McDonald with Seattle in the Super Bowl right now. That's a coach that worked, that Dennard Wilson worked under in Baltimore. And if he does, Nick, decide to bring a lot of the principles of what Mike McDonald has established with the Seahawks and use what he learned with Mike McDonald, because you went over it a little bit earlier, but there's an extensive coaching career with Wilson background that I want to get into. But if he does kind of start to bring those principles, I listened to this excellent breakdown before the NFC Championship game from Mike McDonald. I think it was from 2 years ago, because he was breaking down tape of Ravens. I guess this is when he was coordinating the Ravens defense. This is Seattle Seahawks head coach Mike McDonald, who's in the Super Bowl right now. And he just talked about how much of an advantage and how much of a basic core principled concept it is for him to try to get 5 guys on the line of scrimmage on every single snap. And he went over and went into detail, and you could find it. I'll retweet it, and you can find his breakdown of it, of like just the advantage it gives him from a schematic standpoint. It gives him from a defensive standpoint to have those 5 declared, and just the offensive line has to account for all 5 of those guys on any given snap at the line of scrimmage. So I don't think we're going to be looking at like a Shane Bowen type defense is my point. Like, it's not going to be anything like that.
No. And look, the Titans were 6-28 over the 2 seasons with Wilson. Brian Callahan who was the coach that Dennard Wilson joined, he didn't even make it through his second season. It was a disaster, right? Like let's just call it what it was. That's not going to be laid at the feet of the first time, not fully be laid at the feet of the first time defensive coordinator who was trying to deal with all of these issues on the young offense, the injuries on defense and all that. Right. But now he's coming back to a more stable foundation with John Harbaugh, someone that he has worked with, somebody who has a proven track record, and he's going to have a lot more personnel and some top end personnel that can allow you to do some really creative shit at the line of scrimmage with Dexter Lawrence, right? If you want to use those 5-man fronts, the Giants have 5 guys that they can align. I think they still need to add a defensive lineman, but if you include, in a base personnel, if you will, a Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns with the Dexter Lawrence, Darius Alexander, and then that 5th guy, that could be a strong front. I would like some improvements to the linebackers, but that's a conversation possibly for another day. But I could see this working out for sure, of course. But you need to prove it at this point, right? Like the proof needs to be put out there, because it was rough under the Tennessee Titans. And I'm not going to allow look, I wanted Jim Leonhard too, but Giants can get Jim Leonhard. So it just seems like he decided.
It seems like it's true. They really wanted him, which sucks. And Harbaugh pinpoint, but it is what it is. And like you said, we can't cry over that spilled milk, and that's just the situation. It doesn't mean that Wilson won't be better, like I said, than Leonhard. It's going to be different. I think the reason I wanted that so badly, to me, Nick, was in my mind, I think this defense is really incomplete. I think they have a lot of issues that maybe the Titans have, that a team like the Seahawks don't have. When I look at the Seahawks roster, like, yeah, the Mike McDonald system, it works so well. Well, of course it works so well. Look across the board at that roster on defense. It's unbelievable. And then you can even look at the Ravens. It's like when Kyle Hamilton is healthy, that defense also has a lot of talent, which leads me to believe the next thing, and I know some people mentioned in the chat, I had it circled in my notes, I can't wait to get to it with you, is I feel like this hire going Dennard Wilson over Jim Leonhard makes it even more important based on everything I know about what he's learned, Wilson working in that Ravens scheme and under John Harbaugh and what I assume John Harbaugh wants to get him to. It leads me to believe Caleb Downs, or getting a safety or nickel type player like Caleb Downs, is going to become a much bigger priority for the Giants. And potentially he could be the target and maybe even their top guy right now in this draft at number 5 overall. I just look at this defense. Is that necessarily the case if the Giants had went with like a Flores or a Rex Ryan or a Jim Leonhard type? I don't know. But now that they didn't and they went with this type of coach, it might be more important to get this type of player on that defense, because I have my concerns personnel wise, dude, about linebacker and corner. Like, yeah, he's working with more than he's worked with Wilson from a defensive front standpoint, pass rushing wise. But dude, behind him at the second and third levels, we still have a shit ton of question marks that like you can't just sit back and play defense a lot of the time with this group.
When it comes to the draft, I just want a blue chip guy insofar as they're one that's even available, right? At 5. I'm not sure if there's going to be one. And if Downs to me, from the little bit that I have seen, again, have not done the full all 22 breakdown of him. He seems like he has that potential and somebody who you can steal math with as a safety, right? You can align in light boxes that entice the run. And then once they do it, it's like Downs is in the box, making the tackle. And now next thing they know, it's 2nd and 9. And then it's 3rd and 7, and now you're in an advantageous spot where Kayvon and Abdul Carter, Burns, Deck, all these guys can go and get the quarterback. So Downs seems like he could do that from the secondary. You already have guys up front who can help you do that. A guy like Dexter Lawrence, right? So that is very appetizing to me. Now, on the flip side, when it comes to just the Dennard Wilson hire, I think that makes a lot of sense what you said, but you could also propound the idea that this is a defensive backs coach and he can get the most out of a safety group who you've poured a bunch of assets in. And to be frank, you've botched, like Joe Shane, you botched this safety group. We have not gotten the results from Tyler Nubin or Javon Holland. And I know it's only been one season for Javon Holland. And we had Julian Love and Xavier McKinney in the building. They're gone now. So, again, let's not cry over spilt milk, but maybe a guy like Dennard Wilson can get the most out of those guys, right? Yeah. Now, the cornerback position is a totally different thing. This Tay Banks, can you get a lot out of Tay Banks? That's something that I'm really going to be interested to see. But even if independent of Tay Banks, who the hell is the other cornerback starting? So you can't rely on Tay Banks right now. Right. You get something out of him. That's excellent. The Giants need to make that decision on Cordell Flott. And I think Cordell Flott just played some of his best football, but I know we've talked about this on Twitter. I've talked about it with some of our listeners because I'm big on the Giants should resign Cordell Flott. And it's like, well, the Ravens usually have these bigger cornerbacks, right? The Brandon Stevens of the world, the Marlon Humphreys of the world, these bigger, more physical guys. Like Nate Wiggins is a little bit slender, but he's a little bit taller. So I guess that is the one who would fit the archetype of a Cordell Flott. But people have asked, is Cordell Flott long for the roster if long for a John Harbaugh roster because of his deficient size? Now that's a conversation I'm sure we'll have throughout the next 2 months or so. But if the Giants opt not to, who the hell else is going to play cornerback? Is it going to have to be Tay Banks, right?
Yeah.
Or Drew Phillips, Drew Phillips, they think he can kick him outside. He's a pretty good nickel defender, but if you are debating on drafting a safety who can be that nickel defender, that you could drop a Nubin. There's just so many different things. Nubin, I would not want to play man coverage down in that type of, but I think he could be a sub package linebacker. But it's just interesting, the hire in general. I know I'm rambling here a little bit, but I think Flott would be somebody who would fit what any of these coordinators want based off of the development that he showed from the 2020. And we saw it a little bit in 2024, talked about it this summer. And then this year, bro, his footwork was freaking great.
It was.
He was on top of routes, bro. His angles, his reaction timing. It's just there's certain things about Cordell Flott that he's never going to be able to overcome because he's slender. Like that dude can eat 6,000 calories a day. He ain't putting on a pound, Probably not. And that's just the way it is.
He still is pretty young as far as growing into his body, but he's probably, you're right, maxed out at where he's going to be at. And it could lead to injuries and which he has dealt with. We'll see, what Dennard Wilson's appropriate opinion of where they're going to move forward at the corner position. It's obviously something I'm excited about when it comes to this hire versus a Jim Leonhard type, right? It's gotta be a plus, we hope, out of this, which is he should have a better feel for what he needs at the corner and safety position in his system. Now, the Giants have made their investments at safety, but more investments are to come at corner. And quite frankly, dude, even after Charlie Bolin got here and started coaching this defense, there were moments against the Cowboys when they were actually trying in that game before they pulled Dak where I was like, they could still do whatever the hell they want against us because our second and third levels do suck. And it's not magic snap your fingers, though I think I honestly feel like Brian Flores could magic snap his fingers and make this defense good. I do. I really do believe a lot of it's my new thing. I just believe if you play that style of defense, you win most of the time. Even today, like the Patriots, for example, what did they do? It was a really good specific game plan. From the very first snap, they were firing guys downhill, and it comes to just run fits, and they were firing run blitzes. They were just attacking. Like, what are we going to do here? It's Jarrett Stidham. They get one big long play, and then that was it. And then they didn't give up like anything in the second half. Just generally speaking, like put the pressure on these quarterbacks and these offensive lines, which I think Wilson can do and probably will do. We'll see. We got to hope these linebacker safeties hold up. But yeah, like you said, it is good that he'll have evaluation. I think one thing that stood out to me about him was that he had spent 3 years working as a scout with the Bears, which I thought was pretty cool. So good way to get your start as a coach. And maybe he gives us a leg up for evaluation. We haven't really evaluated corners and safeties that well.
No, we haven't. But I still help. But I still look at it because we mentioned, look, the Giants can field a 5-man front, but landing another player who can be a difference maker up there would do a lot. Relegating someone like a Darius Alexander to that third interior defensive line, because your base personnel is going to be a 3-4 now. Now you're going to shade it sometimes. It's going to be nose, 2 4 eyes, or it could be 1 shade, 2 5s, depending on where the strength or the closed side of the formation is offensively. But if you do like a name like Ruben Bain from Miami comes to mind, like could he be somebody that you can yes, he can penetrate and he could be that edge, but he can also, he's physical enough to play that 4-eye in base. Now, Dennard Wilson used nickel more than he did base, like most defensive coordinators do. He's going to be in nickel personnel much more, but even with nickel personnel, Bain could have a role next to Dexter Lawrence with Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, or Kayvon Thibodeau, and you could rotate those guys depending on even if you want to use it in Abdul Carter at linebacker, and that all depends on what the hell the Giants do at the linebacker position this year, right? So there's still a lot of personnel question marks, but I do think this 5th overall pick becomes very interesting because a lot of these defensive pieces, and we're not ruling out wide receiver or any of these other positions, not even tackle, right? But a lot of these defensive pieces, I think if you slide them into a Dennard Wilson defense, man, it could make this defense look very exciting, really. It's just, can you land the veteran players to fill out the roster? That's really what it comes down to. And those veteran signings, it's like, $6 million a year or $3.5 million a year, 1-year deal for this guy. And they come in and they know John Harbaugh and they know Dennard Wilson and they just ball out of their mind. Like those types of guys can make or break a defense. We saw it in 2022 with the Fabian Moreaus of the world, right? It's not exciting, but it's the glue that you need and it's not a liability.
Yeah, you're right. And that players like that in the playoff season, like Fabian Moreau, play a big role, massive role with your defense. And we'll have to see how that takes shape. I thought something interesting. I saw this from Justin Pennick. He tweeted this during that 2024 season that you talked about earlier. Dennard's first as defensive coordinator for the Titans when they were ranked 2nd in defense and they had all those good stats to back it up. They had 6 different linebackers play at least 100 snaps. It seems like, his defense is multiple and he likes to have different players at the second level playing in the game. And right now, I just think that's interesting because I look at the Giants roster and I'm like, who the hell can you play at the second level? Can you play 6 guys at the second level? Bobbio, I'm counting on my hand. Bobbio, Carrique, I guess Micah McFadden if they re-sign him. And then what? Like some of these practice squad guys we saw at the end of the year. So maybe, just maybe, we'll finally see the Giants use a 2nd-round pick on this stacked and loaded inside linebacker class. It'd be nice to see something like that. Maybe, just maybe, they use that and a day 3 pick. I don't know, but I'm hoping there is a priority at the linebacker position if he wants to rotate in a lot of different players, because that's something that's been killing me as a fan and as somebody who watches film on this team. The second level, I just feel like the Giants have been so behind the 8 ball on the second level, specifically in the pass game, getting their hand. We just don't have players get in pass lanes until the very end of the season when Charlie Bolin took over and we had like 2 in a row.
Yeah, it is really odd too, because like Tay Banks has no idea what the hell he's doing at the catch point. And then somebody like Drew Phillips is pretty bad at it too. Paulson Adebo could be better at it. He's the best the Giants probably have at it, which, isn't great, I guess. But
we're not like a PBU team at all. We just we haven't gotten those. Either that's personnel based or it's Shane Bowen based. We'll find out.
And then from a coverage perspective, before we get to some of these other coaches, you're probably going to see a I don't want to read too much into what he did in Tennessee this past year, right? I know it was more middle of the field closed than middle of the field open. Was that because you wanted to fortify the run? Would you drop guys in the box a little bit more, right? But I think you're going to, if the Giants have the personnel to do it, you're going to see more man coverage. You're going to see now. Shane Bowen ran man coverage as well, so I'm not necessarily comparing it with Shane Bowen's defense, but you'll see man coverage, and I don't think it's going to be as predictable. And it's not going to be 3rd and 4th, definitely man coverage this one. It's going to be cover 1 hole, some cover 0.
Right.
they didn't blitz a ton. I want to say they blitzed at a 20% rate, which ranked in the bottom third. But again, this is with the Tennessee Titans personnel. The Giants can get after it with 4. But if you can really dictate, depending on the quarterback, like i.e. to keep it relevant, if you are going up against a Jarrett Stidham, you're probably going to dial it up a little bit more. I'm hoping Wilson has that type of situational play calling. And I have to imagine that he does, since he's been around the game for quite a while at this point.
Yeah, well, we'll find that out. That's information we just don't know right now. It's all speculation. Obviously, he's been with the Eagles, and they loved him with the Eagles. Yeah. He's been with the Ravens. They love him with the Ravens. And he was a hot commodity. He went to the Titans. He was with the Jets before that and the Rams. And, like I said, he got to start scouting with the Chicago Bears. And throughout the way, we've heard, and I'm sure this was a big plus for the Giants, and we have to at least sit here, Nick, and hope it's a plus, an actual plus for us, that, a lot of these people who have worked with him, these former head coaches and defensive coordinators, have said, I think this guy could be a head coach at the NFL level. What does that mean when I hear people say that? It means one of two things. It either means they're a defensive genius from an X's and O's standpoint on film and on the chalkboard, or they have that personality that people believe that coach around them. They can be leaders of men. They can be the guys. I'm hoping, to be honest, it's the first one. It's the former. I mean, I love a good leader of men, Nick, and I want another rah-rah guy in here, but I want you to be able to, like you said, have a diverse game plan for each quarterback you face, because that's something I felt like we got from Wink Martindale.
We did get
That's something I felt like we would get from Jim Leonhard. I'm not sold yet. We didn't get it from Shane Bowen. And I want to hope that Dennard Wilson will be the guy who will do that as well. You mentioned a lot of the numbers. I think you were spot on with them. Just 20.5% blitz rate, which was 23rd in the NFL last year with the Titans. But I really think it's a good point by you. Like, I hate he was second in defense and 20. It's like, all right, well, are we just copying and pasting the personnel from that defense and putting it on ours? Otherwise, what the hell does these stats actually mean?
Yeah, it's relevant to bring the stats up, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be consistent once he inherits an entirely different team with an entirely different philosophy, because the personnel allows him to do certain things that the previous personnel did not allow him to do, right? It's just a different scenery, and a good coach would change his philosophy with different scenery and change what he can do. It's like getting upgraded cards in a board game and being like, oh shit, I can do this now. Bet, let's do it, right? Like, so that's what he's going to hopefully inherit. I'm imagining like a Tavondre Sweat. He was like a 340-pound team. Like, that's going to be what Dexter Lawrence is going to do. Only he's going to do more, because Dexter Lawrence has a lot more in his arsenal, and that leads to like who's going to inherit a Jeffrey Simmons role. Because I'm imagining Sweat's going to be that 1, that 0 when it is base, right? And in certain packages when you can align him over that. But then who is going to be the Jeffrey Simmons? Is that going to be Darius Alexander, or the Giants going to look to find somebody else who can actually plug into that, and Darius Alexander will become a valuable role player behind that? So there's still a lot of, and I'm very interested in what the Giants will do. And I am I'm not going to say I'm like over the moon about this hire, but I'm interested in this hire, right? Like, this is the high. Like,
it's better than like hearing Zach Orr is our defense coordinator. That one would have been pretty disappointing. I probably would have even been somewhat excited about it if it wasn't for like the Leonhard buzz, and that they obviously, that came to fruition, and it's fine.
Of course, if it wasn't for the Leonhard buzz, I think this he might have been. I don't know if he would have been my number 1. I would have liked the Jonathan Gannon, someone like
I would have too.
But I didn't think they were going to come. And again, it all comes down to connections. It's a connection business, people business, and these two have worked together in the past. And dude,
Harbaugh believes in his ability to lead us. Like, that's a key factor, and actually coach these guys.
And look, the Titans had more sacks than the Giants did this year. They had 43 sacks. Giants had like 39, and I think 43 was in the top third of the league. And it's not like anybody was looking at the Titans schedule and being like, oh my God, we got to play the Titans, right? The Titans were one of the step over teams. They were right there with the New York Giants at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yep. Exactly. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously,
the Titans also, like, they had some games where they were competitive, right? Or they pushed some of these
season,
where they pushed some of these teams to I want to say there were some games against, but then they get blown out by.
I think they played well. I think Lamar was playing too, which is funny. Yeah.
I mean, they did get blown out by a decent amount, but a lot of the offense was bad as well. Like, Jacksonville blew them out a couple times. The Colts blew them out. They played the Chargers well. They played the Texans well.
Yeah.
At least the second time. The first time they got their asses kicked. But yeah, we'll wait and see. And he's not the only person they hired, Dan, because Chris Horton was hired as the special teams coordinator. Michael Ghobrial was let go. And now Chris Horton, another former player. So this is 2 former players. It will be the New York Giants special teams, and maybe the Giants can actually have a special teams unit that is respectable. And I want to say Horton was a Giant for, let me check his way. Yes, he was a Giant back in 2020 or 2012 on their practice squad. And he's been the Ravens special teams coordinator since 2019. Before that, he was the assistant special teams coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens from 2014 to 2018. So he's been with John Harbaugh for quite a while. And according to DVOA and a lot of advanced stats, the Ravens are always a top third of the league in a lot of the advanced metrics when it comes to how well the special teams units as a whole perform. I don't know exactly how that is weighed, because I know they've had a good kicking situation with the Justin Tuckers of the world in the past, and it's ironic because Tyler Loop, that whole situation. But I mean, overall, it seems like Chris Horton has done a good job with the special teams unit in Baltimore, and Harbaugh trusts him, and now he's going to be representing the New York Football Giants in that manner.
I think for me, the key is just worked with John Harbaugh for a while, can establish again this culture we're trying to establish 10 straight years, can rely on him as that reliable special teams units. As far as the DVOA and all of that goes, very well and good. But again, our special teams unit will not be copying, pasting any of the players from the Ravens. And the players will play, the coaches will coach, the players will play, and that will always be the key. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend we just got the best special teams coach in the NFL. I don't know, I don't know where the special teams will go. I think in general, special teams in the NFL, Nick, is very like what's the word for this? It's like hit or miss. I feel like game to game and season to season, honestly. I don't think there's always that much consistency in it, but there are some units that do tend to be consistent. The Ravens have been one of them. So hopefully now the Giants can be one of them. We've tried so many different things on special teams over the last 5 years.
No, absolutely. And both, and look, Chris Horton and Willie Taggart, or well, not Willie Taggart, we haven't brought him up yet. Willie Taggart's another one who is coming over as the running backs coach. And Willie Taggart's been around for a hot minute in college football. He was the head coach of, I think, Florida Atlantic. And I remember him from Florida State. Prior to that, he was at Oregon. He was at South Florida. He's been in a bunch of different locations, but he's been with the Baltimore Ravens since 2023, where he was their running backs coach. And then last year, he got the assistant head coach nod as being the running backs coach. So he's going to come in here and coach Cam Scatterbo and Tyrone Tracy Jr.
Yep. And you talked about Robert Prince. I think that's an interesting one just because of the point you mentioned. He's the guy with the viral clip of telling Jalen Hyatt, like, all you can really do is run. You're not really a route runner. You just run.
Hey. Prince tried to be nice about it. He's like, yeah, you got a specific skill set. It's a really valuable one. The game's predicated on speed. He's like, oh yeah, what's that skill set, huh? I can run routes too. He's like, we're going to see. We never saw, guys.
Never saw. He's still in the contract too. That's the craziest part about the Jalen Hyatt situation. Like, they traded up for him. They burned the pick. They needed wide receiver help last year. And then he had the perfect opportunity and still couldn't do anything. And now it's like this coach is coming in who's like, nah, I already evaluated him. And all he can do is run go routes and can't even really do those anymore. I feel like he sucked at running those this year for the Giants too. So we'll see what happens there.
I forgot about this, though. Robert Prince, he was the acting head coach in 2020 for the Lions before Dan Campbell got there. I forgot all about that. Yeah, because he was their wide receivers coach from 2014 to 2020. And I think he spent time
bringing in head coaches of other programs, Florida Atlantic and the Lions. Yeah, you got a little head coach experience. Come in here. It can only help. Matt Pease, assistant linebackers coach. I think the Giants are bringing him for some maybe assistant coach, head coaching role. I'm not entirely sure. It's going to be some kind of good role. He's been around for a while. That name worked with Harbaugh, another guy from his staff, Adam Schrack, Brendan Clark.
Matt Pease is the son of Dean.
Oh, I might have been thinking of Dean Pease. So this is his son. Can't go wrong with the son of Dean Pease, though. So I'll take it. Schrack.
Schrack, I'm sure he does a good job. He's been around for a while.
They're all Ravens guys. I mean, it's 8 guys so far, and they've all been guys who had worked with John Harbaugh. So it's clear what's going on here. And to be honest, I'm all for it because they needed to change the Giants' way. The fastest and quickest way to do that is to refresh the building with a new way. And it's not like we're like moving forward with like a way that hasn't worked, because you could even argue like we move forward in some way. When we made the switch to go to Shane and Dable, in some ways, Nick, we did kind of say we're moving forward in the Buffalo way, sort of, kind of, not fully, but kind of. That way wasn't really a good way. Like, it was just Josh Allen hit. You drafted Josh Allen. That's basically what that way was. At least the Ravens way has been, we've been successful through multiple quarterbacks. We win games even when we've had to go to backup quarterbacks. We have an established culture and systematic way of doing things. To me, it's very different than just we drafted Josh Allen. God bless. Let's move forward with that style.
That'd be nice. The Giants also hired Megan Roseberg, the daughter of Jerry Roseberg, who was the assistant to the head coach and I think a defensive assistant on the Ravens staff. So she's coming over as well to join John Harbaugh.
All right, let's do some supers. Let's see what we got.
Oh, you want some soupy whoopies? Okay, let's go.
Yeah, don't ever call them that again, but we can.
Oh, you don't like the soupy whoopie?
No, that was weird.
Yo, chat, let me know how much you guys like the soupy whoopie or no. Do we like the rhyme? I'm a big like rhyme cornball when it comes to stuff like that. So
that was just too corny.
Too? I don't know. The chat
can decide.
Chat, speak for me. No, okay. Jeffrey Wilson, thank you so much. Wanted Wilson back in 2024. I remember the talk around him being a good defensive coordinator option then. get a strong offensive line coach, and I'll begin to get a little hope back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was our number one. I think we wanted back in 2024, but to be fair, it was a pretty thin group.
Right.
Back
it was quick. We had just moved on from Wink, and I saw somebody mention in the chat earlier, like we're going to see a very similar defense from Wilson that we saw from Wink. I don't really think that's true. We'll watch the tape this week and kind of decide that. I highly doubt that's true. Wink was a pretty unique defensive coordinator from a schematic standpoint, but I do think he'll bring something to this defense, and I think it's going to be a lot, maybe not as aggressive as Wink or Jim, but more aggressive than Bowen.
The bar was set pretty low. Right.
Yeah.
Like our you don't have to do too much as a defensive coordinator for us to be like, oh my gosh, Shane Bowen did not impress in his short time here. AFC 5253. Thank you so much for the super chat. Didn't say anything, but we appreciate you nonetheless. Cy, appreciate you as always. Says, even if it doesn't end in a Super Bowl, Harbaugh forcing change in the nepotism-filled front office makes his tenure a win already.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's always refreshing when we see change. I mean, we were talking about change back in 2022 when the Giants went out and hired Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, just because it wasn't hiring from within, because prior to that, it was the Dave Gettleman era, right? And Jerry Reese prior to that. It's always very insular organization. But yeah, Harbaugh's coming in here, and there's some changes being made, ladies and gentlemen, and change is what we needed for this organization. H50 Pharaoh, thank you so much. So do you think Joe Schoen was nervous because he saw the people in the room and he know most of the staff would not be there in the future?
Oh, and people are saying, was he nervous at the presser? There's been, speculation that he sounded nervous when he was introduced.
Oh, he did sound nervous. He did sound nervous. I agree. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, no, I can't get in his head, right? I mean, there's also just from look, that could be it, but also that was the biggest press conference that guy might have ever spoken at, other than his opening press conference. And it's also very hot seat for this guy. And I don't even know if he knew how safe he was. And his staff and people who were rely on him. So yeah, there could be something to that for sure. I mean, dude, did you see how many people were there? That was a ton.
Yeah. Oh yeah. People. It was a big event.
That was our last super chat. And so look, the staff is rounding out. We'll see if Todd Monken joins. There's still a lot of positions that need to be filled on the coaching staff, but it's only Tim Kelly and Charlie Bolin are the only two who were retained from the Daboll era.
And we still need to see who's going to be the offensive line coach, the offensive coordinator. Those are the last two big dominoes, I think, to fall, Nick. Excited to see where they go with that. Probably end up, like you said, just going to be Monken and maybe Warhop. It's two more Baltimore guys. But look, here's another Baltimore guy, Dennard Wilson. And I'll say this, learning under McDonald, learning in that system and in that way, it's definitely not a bad thing. Especially, let's say they come out and they say, here, you can also have Caleb Downs to work with or something like that, or Alvell Reese, or, one of these stud players from Ohio State's defense. It might be an interesting scenario where he could have, theoretically speaking, at paper at least, more talent to work with than he's. I don't want to say that though, because the Ravens have had talent in their second and third levels. The Giants, the biggest issue for me with this team moving forward, no matter who was going to be hired as a defensive coordinator, is I still think they kind of suck at the second and third levels. That just is what we've seen on tape though. That doesn't mean it's going to be the same in 2026 as the tape of 2025. Things can change, scheme can change a lot of things, confidence, all sorts of things, health, but we just didn't have it a lot in the second and third. I think even about that Dak game, like I mentioned, before they pulled Dak, he did have some drives that were just kind of getting his way with the Giants. And that was seemingly what happened at the second and third level all season against us.
Yeah, and I see the chat saying, didn't the Giants hire an offensive line coach? It hasn't been fully announced. It's just Ian O'Connor, who has just been on top of everything when it comes to John Harbaugh and the New York Giants, said that it's a strong possibility that George Warhop, the Ravens offensive line coach from 2024 and 2025, will replace Carmen Bricillo. And
the weirdest thing about that is just go ahead with Warhop too.
No, he's just been around he's like a 64-year-old offensive line coach who's been coaching since the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Prior to the Ravens, he was with the Texans for a year, the Jaguars for 3 years, Tampa Bay for 5 years. So he's been around. Browns for a while, all just offensive line coach, which I picture a guy, man, in my head that old head offensive line coaches, no nonsense, no bullshit type of dude. Those are the best kinds of coaches.
Yeah, and we'll see how he is if he does come over as the offensive line coach. It was weird. I thought just that we had the story from Art Stapleton and from whoever, John Harbaugh's dad talked to him. He's like, I watched this offensive line coach. The first thing you got to do is keep this offensive line coach. The offensive line play well. It's well, actually, we're moving on from Carmen, and he's under contract too. I think part of it might be he wants to bring in Warhop, another guy, another Raven. Part of it might also be that Bricillo might have an opportunity we don't know about, right? What if it's possible Bricillo has heard from Dable or something like, I'm very likely going to get this Buffalo job and I'll, hire you to come coach my offensive line. If you're Bricillo, you might want to go do that because you're only under contract, I think, for one more year with the Giants, and there's more stability to taking a multi-year offer from another team.
Possibly. I mean, Bricillo did speak and say, like, hey, if the Giants will have me, I'll be back.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it did seem like he liked this unit. I mean, there's some talent there, and he's gotten a lot out of them. And I would say he's maximized this group. So it's hey, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
We'll see, man. And dude, free agency's not too far away, too, Dan. And there's some Ravens gonna be available. I'm looking at some of these names, and I'm like, some of these guys are gonna be New York Giants for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we'll have to see how that all plays out. Thank you so much, everybody, tuning in to the Big Blue Banter podcast. Please hit the like button right now. You got to start hitting the like button a lot more often. Leave a like, leave a comment, rate and subscribe on iTunes. Otherwise, have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk to you soon.